We have a new update surrounding Jonathan Kuminga's impending free agency. He's going to enter restricted free agency reportedly this summer. And we're going to go through the top 5 trade targets potentially. As we know, Golden State and JK might be exploring sign and trade options. But the latest coming from Jonathan Kuminga here is that he's in the gym like we see every single summer. Jonathan Kuminga working on his game, trying to, I guess, add something new to the 22-year-old's arsenal. Look, man, we see the same thing year after year with Kuminga. This time, though, he was actually working out with AJ Debinsa, the presumptive #1 overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft. He's going to be headed to BYU next year, and they both have Congolese connections, as they both have heritage back from the Congo. So it was cool to see those two work out. I bet you AJ could show him a thing or two, as he looks very polished at just 17 years old. But Kuminga, on those Instagram posts, I guess his whole little photo dump of his gym workout, he turned off Instagram comments. And we also know previously that Kuminga did black out his Instagram profile, took down a bunch of different Warriors posts here and there. So he is definitely leaning into this free agency era that he's about to enter and kind of tuning out all the noise, as I'm sure there's going to be people talking in the comments section, as there always is with Jonathan Kuminga. Now, Bobby Marks also released this in a little bit of a free agency primer on ESPN. He said that Golden State is expected to extend the $7.9 million qualifying offer to Jonathan Kuminga. Now, what does that do? That puts Kuminga set for restricted free agency. So what that means is Golden State can obviously sign Kuminga to a bigger contract than anybody else, but another team can offer an offer sheet to him. They can send an offer sheet to him to sign him to a long-term deal, but Golden State will then have the right to match that deal and bring Kuminga back. Now, there aren't too many teams this year with cap space to make that happen, though. And the only team that was being rumored about offering Kuminga a big long-term offer sheet was the Brooklyn Nets. And we heard a report about last week that the Nets are not expected to extend a restricted free agent offer sheet to Jonathan Kuminga, where, something in excess of $20, $25, $30 million per season. There's no other team in the NBA outside of Brooklyn that can make that happen. So if Jonathan Kuminga wants to be on a new team, well, it's likely to have to come via sign and trade. And we've heard from The Athletic that both sides, Golden State and Kuminga, are expected to explore sign and trade options this summer. Now, we've gotten some pushback reports that there might be an increasing likelihood that Kuminga comes back to Golden State, and the financial restrictions about sending Kuminga out in a sign and trade are why that makes things complicated. Now, how do the people at the top of the Warriors brain trust view Jonathan Kuminga and his future? Well, we know Joe Lacob loves Kuminga. He had him sat next to him at courtside at the Golden State Valkyries game. He has long been influential in Kuminga's positioning in this roster, him being drafted and him being held out of trade conversations. Now, on the complete flip side, Steve Kerr completely knows and thinks that Jonathan Kuminga does not fit in his roster and rotation next to Curry, Draymond, and Jimmy Butler. So he's probably looking more towards a new face in place of Jonathan Kuminga for next season. Now, Mike Dunleavy, the general manager, I feel like he's kind of indifferent, but we know that Dunleavy was the driving force in getting the Jimmy Butler trade done. So I'm praying that basketball-related decisions are being made by Dunleavy and not Joe Lacob, because I think if the owner has a little bit more of a hand in this decision-making, then it's more likely that Kuminga comes back. And we did hear from Monty Poole of NBC Sports Bay Area, he says it's very likely that the Warriors find a way to keep JK this summer. Now, he also says, though, that doesn't mean that he's long-term peace here in Golden State. He also could be moved later as early as next trade deadline. Now, the reports are from Kuminga's side of things that he is open to a Warriors return, that there is no kind of butting heads personally between he and Steve Kerr, and that Kuminga also still views himself as a potential all-star level player. He still thinks he can get up to that level of play. Me personally, I'm not so sure, but I definitely don't believe that it can happen with the Golden State Warriors, so it would be in the best interest of both sides to see a sign and trade through. Now, how would that go down? Well, the max salary that Kuminga can earn per year on this contract is $38.7 million. Now, if a team signs him to that deal, they would obviously take on 100% of the salary. They're paying the guy a new contract. Now, from the perspective of Golden State, they would only be sending out 50% of that new contract. So if Kuminga gets $25 million, Golden State would only be able to take back $12.5 million back in the deal unless they added other salaries to match it. Now, you obviously have to match salaries in trades in the NBA, and Kuminga can be aggregated with other contracts on Golden State's books. So what do you guys think happens with Jonathan Kuminga at this point? As what's today? June 9th? What happens with JK? Do the Warriors trade him or do they keep him? T for trade, K for keep. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. Now we're going to go through the top 5 Warriors trade targets as if Jonathan Kuminga were to be traded away this summer. Look, there are some big fish where Golden State could send away, 3-4 contracts, 3, 4, 5 teams involved. I'm going to try to stick to some players today that Golden State can kind of accomplish a trade with, either via 2 teams, just a 1-on-1 ordeal, or a 3-team trade. I'm not trying to make some crazy salary hoop jumping throughs to get this done and just bring you guys players that aren't all that realistic. Now, a name that is very realistic and has been talked about at length is Nikola Vucevic of the Chicago Bulls. At age 34, look, I would not be too happy if this was the primary piece brought back in a Kuminga sign-and trade, but look, there are rumors about Chicago potentially being a landing spot, and Vooch is a deal that they're trying to move off of. He has a $20 million expiring salary. Golden State might have to include another contract, sending back to Chicago to get this done, but look, Vooch could fit in pretty solid for Golden State. I just think he's such a defensive liability at this point, and I don't know if he actually moves the needle for Golden State winning the Western Conference. So let's go to my top 5 Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade targets, starting with Daniel Gafford over there with the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Dallas isn't really in a position to straight up trade for Kuminga 1-for-1, like bringing him in. So I don't anticipate like Jonathan Kuminga going to the Dallas Mavericks here. It probably would be a 3-team deal. But Daniel Gafford does make a good salary to make something happen to where, like, if Kuminga makes, $25-30 million on his next contract elsewhere, the Warriors can take back a salary of $14.4 million for next season. And he wants to be a starter long term. He's got Derek Lively breathing down his neck. I like Daniel Gafford a lot, but I'm not so sure that his best future is going to be with the Dallas Mavericks. I think he can slot right in to that Warriors starting center position. He's a great rebounder. He's just a walking double-double. Can defend the rim as well. Works great as a lob threat, roll and cut big man. And I just think he fits really, really solidly into the Golden State Warriors system here and can play a lot of minutes like I know that he wants to do. What about Malik Monk? I know, a name that we haven't really talked about too frequently, and this would be an interdivision trade, which you don't see all that often. But look, man, Malik Monk can fill it up. He can shoot the rock, and he can shoot it at a high clip. He makes about a modest $20 million for next season, and that's a workable salary to get a deal done. And honestly, Kuminga could be a destination for the Sacramento Kings here. Like, he's a young player. They don't really have too much direction going on right now after trading away De'Aaron Fox. And I think Malik Monk could be expendable if they're bringing in a guy like Kuminga as well. I don't think he is the most efficient player. Clearly, he has shown that he has not been since his last season with the Los Angeles Lakers over 3 years ago. So, look, I think for Golden State fans who are hesitant about bringing in a 6'3" volume scoring guard, you're right to have those reservations. But Golden State clearly showed in the postseason that they need a bucket getter, and I know Malik Monk can go out there and get buckets. What about Kobe White, though? And you could either flip these two back and forth. I would say some people think Malik Monk's a better player than Kobe White at this point. But at 25 years old and in a solid deal, I like Kobe White, man. He can create his own offensively, and albeit for a very bad Chicago Bulls team. But this is a 20-point-per-game scorer, and he is a bigger player at 6'5". I think he can be a willing team defender in Golden State. And, again, be that backup ball handler for Steph to where, like, you don't have to worry if he's on the bench, and he can go get his and go on a stretch where he scores 12 points in a quarter or something like that, because he's been a 20-point-per-game guy each of the last 2 seasons. This is the player who's gotten better basically every single year, shoots above league average from 3-point range, can dish the ball out as well, makes great plays with the ball in his hands, and Golden State does not have enough players on the roster that can do that. Let's move to number 2 on the list. Jakob Poeltl, the big man over in Toronto. And this is a name I've brought up as a Warriors trade target in the past. And I was looking through Fanspo, was looking through, Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade ideas. And I saw on Twitter that a Raptors fan said, we should go after Kuminga. That'd be a player that would fit in nicely in Toronto if they were to miss out on a Kevin Durant or Giannis, who they are rumored to be interested in. And Jakob Poeltl could be the name coming back to Golden State in that scenario as well. He makes just under $20 million next season, and he's 7'1". Golden State fans would love to see a 7'1" player that is not Quentin Post, one that can actually defend a little bit in their lineup and starting for him. And Poeltl's a better player than Daniel Gafford, man. I think Golden State would be very lucky to get him in a deal back for Kuminga. He averages over a block a game. He's a walking 15-10 night in and night out. I think he would fit in seamlessly for Golden State. He has that push shot in his game, can work in the post as well. I'm in on Jakob Poeltl, being a member of the Golden State Warriors in a Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade. It makes sense for all sides. And it's one of those guys where, you don't have to worry about the future of your center position. Like, you just don't. And he's going to fit in seamlessly. I could be persuaded to have him at my number 1. We're going to get to my number 1 in just a moment. But Jakob Poeltl would absolutely be a name that I'd be looking for if I'm the Golden State Warriors. All right, let's move on to number 1 now, and that goes to Cam Johnson. Yes, I know. It's a spoiler, not so spoiler. He's been my number 1 Warriors trade target for the longest time now because I think he would just be the most seamless fit in Warriors history. As far as a movement shooter goes, he's about the best in the league. 6'8", can defend multiple positions, and is on the Warriors timeline as well. 29, 30-year-old guy. He makes $20 million next year. My only issue with trading for a guy like Cam Johnson would be that he doesn't exactly, fit the mold of, can he come back in this trade? Like, Brooklyn, if they want Jonathan Kuminga that bad, can just sign him outright. And their reports are coming out that they're not going to extend that deal to him. So it makes the Cam Johnson trade a little bit trickier. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about Cam Johnson and who I would actually trade Jonathan Kuminga for in just a moment. But make sure you guys get hooked up before these fly off the shelves. Steph Curry City jersey from the 24-25 NBA season at this link right here. Yeah, they are on sale, like a crazy sale right now. 50% off, so go get yours today. Chatsports.com/Curry City. That link will be in the comments and descriptions of today's video. Cam Johnson, man, 20 point per game score. And this is an efficient 20. Like, this is a guy who doesn't need the ball in his hands. Can work with the ball in his hands and has been asked to do that more often in Brooklyn. But overall, like, he, as far as just running around the perimeter goes, like, he's standing in the corner, like, he's got hot zones from all over. Cam Johnson. I'm not joking. Like, you could go look at his shot chart. It's dark red all over the place. He's efficient from everywhere. So I think he'd be awesome as a versatile switching defender. Slide him right into the 3 or the 4 spot, and you're cooking with gas for next season. Cam Johnson is legit a player I think could take the Warriors over the hump. So who would you pick to trade for in a Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade? Out of these names, yeah, we could shoot bigger, aim bigger, but these are some names that I think are fairly realistic for Golden State to get back. If it's Daniel Gafford, type DG. If it's Malik Monk, type MM. If it's Kobe White, type CW. If it's Jakob Poeltl, type JP. If it's Cam Johnson, type CJ in the comment section. Let me know who you guys think. Most recent reports have suggested that the most likely outcome for the Warriors offseason is that Jonathan Kuminga ends up re-signing with the team. And look, man, if you've watched my videos before, then you would know that I'm not the biggest fan of this outcome, but with the financial complications and the current trade market right now around the league, it looks pretty likely that the Warriors end up retaining JK. Now, let's go a little bit more in depth here as to why it's a little bit complicated to move off of Jonathan Kuminga. Now, this offseason, he becomes a restricted free agent. The Warriors expected to extend the qualifying offer, which means he's a free agent with some restrictions that the Warriors can match any offer that he ends up signing with another team. And the max offer that he can get this offseason is $38.7 million a season. Now, the incoming salary for any team that were to sign him would be obviously 100% of that, let's say $38.7 mil. And then for the Warriors case, since he's a restricted free agent, the Warriors would only be sending out 50% of that. So in that case, about $19.5 million. Salary matching rules apply there after that. Now, Jonathan Kuminga's contract can be aggregated with other contracts with Golden State, but with pretty bad depth, let's be honest, on the roster at this point. They can't afford to give away too many of their big pieces, and they don't have a ton of big contracts anyway on their books. Anthony Slater with this a couple of weeks ago, kind of setting the stage for Kuminga's offseason. He said the Warriors front office, Kuminga's representatives, and the league are expected to explore all options into July. But team sources have been hinting that because of these market and financial restrictions, there's a likely world where the most obvious and prudent path is for them to bring Kuminga back and figure the rest out later. And we also heard just a couple of days ago, we reported it right here on the show, Monty Poole, Warriors insider at NBC Sports Bay Area, said it's very likely the Warriors find a way to keep Jonathan Kuminga. And that basically means that they're not going to find a trade partner for him this offseason, whether it's they don't get the value back that they would want, or the money just doesn't work, because there aren't a ton of players that make an impact for Golden State, making half of what Kuminga would get on his next contract. But then I saw this today that kind of further cemented this notion for me. An anonymous Western Conference executive said the following about Jonathan Kuminga. They said just sign him and wait. That's the logical way to do this. It's unorthodox, but you pay Kuminga, you play him, you see if it works. It probably won't. But in that case, you just trade him at the deadline and you gave him $25 million a year. You get $25 million in players back. And we have talked about this over the past couple days that Kuminga coming back to Golden State is a real possibility. And what did Poole say after? It's very likely that Golden State brings it back. That he also might not be a long-term piece. That Golden State and everybody in the building believes that Kuminga is not a player that is going to bring them championships down the road. So what do? Instead of, getting half of the, value back for Kuminga, essentially, that you would get for him in the season this summer, why not just re-sign him to an extension, see if it works for a couple of months to start the season, and then assess at the trade deadline when he is eligible after December, after 6 months upon signing the contract. It would be really nice if this wasn't the case for Golden State. Look, I would want to get off of Kuminga's contract this summer. I would want to start on October whatever with the roster that hopefully goes into May whatever into the postseason. Like, I don't want a lot of roster shakeup. We already had that happen in the 24-25 NBA season, so it just doesn't make all that much sense to have more roster shakeup with a very finite amount of time left in Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler's championship window. And look, on the flip side, I'd like to get as much back for Kuminga as we possibly can. So that means essentially re-signing him this summer. I struggle to find the words with how I feel about this because, look, man, it doesn't fit. Steve Kerr knows it doesn't fit. Mike Dunleavy deep down probably knows it doesn't fit. The only person that believes in Jonathan Kuminga and the Golden State Warriors' long-term relationship is Joe Lacob. And clearly he has shown that his basketball decision-making and acumen is really just not up to par, and he shouldn't be making those type of decisions. So I guess my main point here is I want to get as much back possible for Jonathan Kuminga, but not at the expense of keeping him into next season. So some sign and trade targets for Jonathan Kuminga alone this offseason. Remember, it's 50% of what he would get. And let's just talk about around a $25 to $30 million deal. I do not expect Kuminga on the open market, especially even in a sign and trade scenario, to command more than $30 million annually. So some names, Kobe White, we've talked about a bunch on the channel. $12.9 million, a really good on-the-ball scorer, and something Golden State doesn't really lacks in their backcourt outside of Steph. And then Daniel Gafford making $14.4 million. That'd be a little bit heftier of a price and would also require a Kuminga sign and trade to involve the Dallas Mavericks and involve a third team that can take on Kuminga's salary. Like, Jonathan Kuminga's not going to Dallas, but as far as a player's value that I would like back, Daniel Gafford is Kobe White. That's the kind of tier of player that I'm looking for with Kuminga. You could argue both these guys are better and more valuable than JK, but the money matches up. JK is also 22 with a whole heck of a lot of potential. Don't forget that. You tell me, though, do the Golden State Warriors re-sign Jonathan Kuminga this offseason? Yes or no? Let me know, plain and simple, in the comments section. Are they bringing him back? And this has nothing to do with long-term. They could end up trading him at next deadline. Do they bring him back at least, though, this summer? Is Kuminga putting pen to paper with the Dubs? Let me know in the comments section. Right now, I'd say yes. It's unfortunate with the way that the market looks right now. Nobody's got money, and I don't know how many teams want Jonathan Kuminga on their roster, to be quite honest with you. I have some teams in mind like the Chicago Bulls. We had thought for the longest time the Nets would be interested, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case at this point. So I don't really know where Kuminga or where Golden State and Kuminga, I guess you could say, look from here. As far as what Jonathan Kuminga has going on, we've been watching him in the gym the past couple of days, getting some videos up from his trainers. He posted a photo dump on Instagram playing with AJ DeBanza and all that stuff. It's great. We see it every summer. Kuminga playing in an empty gym. I want to see it in a 5v5 setting, fitting next to Steph Curry, which he has yet to do in 4 years. Now, according to Anthony Slater, Kuminga himself has not yet shut the door and slammed the door on a return to Golden State, which makes sense. I'm sure he and his agents and representation know that the market probably isn't that great for him this offseason. They can do math. And as far as Kuminga's relationship with everybody in Golden State, it seems to be fine on a personal level. It really just comes down to basketball. And I mean, if I was Kuminga, that would boil over into being personal for me. But apparently there's no irreconcilable player or coach and player and organizational differences. So I guess that's something. And then Anthony Slater said that Kuminga still has visions of becoming an all-star. Now, again, if I were him, do I believe in that becoming real in Golden State? I'm not so sure I do. And if I sign a 4-year deal, there's no guarantee I get traded. And I'm trying to look out for my long-term future as well. What about the next contract that Kuminga probably wants to get way more than $25 million a year on? I'm not so sure that his best chance of becoming an all-star and getting that type of money is in Golden State. And kind of just to wrap up free agency and all this stuff for the Dubs right now, I wanted to shift quickly to Rob Murrows, who tweeted this out. And I'm not going to lie, I was even hesitant to put this in the show today because I'm not so sure how credible and reputable Ball Report X is, but it seems like they have a legion of quote-unquote insiders. And I'm also not so sure that this is the most groundbreaking report either. It says the Warriors and guard Gary Payton II have mutual interest in negotiating a new deal. Golden State is looking to sign Payton to a discount contract. I don't think it's the craziest deal, but it was something of note that came across my timeline today. And remember back to the trade deadline when Golden State was looking at a potential Nikola Vucevic deal? Well, the reason they didn't make that deal is because it would have made a guy like Gary Payton much more difficult to re-sign come this summer if he was dealt in that deal, as well as Kevon Looney, who, when they weren't traded this deadline, it seemed like Golden State was pretty set on bringing them back this offseason. And as far as kind of what the figures would look like for those guys, I would expect vet min deals for both GP2 and Kevon Looney for that matter. Both longtime Dubs, both fit the culture, both great in the locker room, and both at this point established veteran leaders within the Warriors organization. So it would make sense from an organizational standpoint to bring those guys back. But I will say I'm not so sure I want them playing as big of roles as they did in the postseason late next year for Golden State. Now, coming up, we're going to go through the latest NBA trade reports as far as what's going on around the league with Giannis, Kevin Durant, and how it all impacts Golden State, because in a way, it kind of all impacts the Kuminga trade ordeal as well. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, I got to tell you guys about this awesome deal we got going on with our friends over at Fanatics. How often do you see a Steph Curry jersey half off? Yeah, you always see players who leave teams. Like Klay jerseys, yeah, they're heavily discounted right now. How often do you see Steph Curry jerseys on the low? 50% off at this link right here, chatsports.com/Curry City. It was last year's City jerseys. You can get this fresh Curry drip right here at this link. I put that in the comment section and description of today's video as well, so it's easy to click on. Go get yourself a fresh Steph Curry jersey if you don't have one today. Okay, so let's start with Kevin Durant as far as what's going on around the NBA trade rumor mill. And we'll keep this fairly brief because, let's be honest, Golden State's not really in the market to acquire Kevin Durant. They kind of missed out the trade deadline. And then as far as Giannis goes, that's always been a pipe dream. He would have to demand a trade to Golden State. So they're not getting either one of these guys. However, a West rival might end up with Kevin Durant. The Spurs are looked at as the most likely destination for a Durant trade, according to multiple reports at this point. We've heard from some Phoenix, Arizona AZ Sports reporters that Durant's camp is eyeing the Spurs as a destination. The San Antonio Spurs also have the draft capital and the young, assets capital on their roster to be able to make a trade really work with the Suns. And according to a couple other reports, the Suns have lowered their asking price on Kevin Durant. So it could be a package of like Devin Vassell, Barnes, Keldon Johnson, whatever combo those two guys, and like the number 14th pick. And this thing could get done. And Bill Simmons thinks it might be done already. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if KD to the Spurs is done already, and they haven't announced it. Basically, they've agreed on specifics, just announced it on the week of the draft. This goes back to the Giannis thing. I think they traded for KD just because it costs less. And that's wholeheartedly true. The Spurs would have to give up the number 2 pick. They'd have to give up maybe even Stephon Castle, both, to go out there and go get a Giannis Antetokounmpo to San Antonio. So it doesn't seem like they're really in that market at this point.
Golden State's offseason doesn't seem to be just about plugging holes. Jonathan Kuminga's contract, Kevin Durant trade whispers, and a top 5 target list that's gaining serious attention. Overall, it looks like a serious effort of setting up a final title push around Steph Curry. Here's everything you need to know. The Warriors are playing a long game with Jonathan Kuminga. As a restricted free agent, he's guaranteed a qualifying offer worth around $7.9 million. That gives Golden State matching rights. However, never assume this means long-term commitment. Instead, the front office might offer a shorter contract, something like 2 years with a player option. Why? Because that structure gives them flexibility. If he signs now, he's eligible for a mid-season trade. That's where things get interesting. Multiple outlets have reported that a sign-and-trade is on the table. Teams are circling, and Golden State knows Kuminga has market value. But they're in no rush. They want to see how the roster gels first, especially after the Jimmy Butler acquisition. This isn't a mystery. The Warriors want size, shooting, and athleticism. That's been the consistent message across reporters. Cam Johnson is on their radar. He's indeed a clean fit on the wing with floor spacing and playoff experience. In addition, John Collins is a rebounding machine who can run with Draymond or anchor the bench unit. Kobe White is also there. He is an underrated backcourt scorer who doesn't need high usage. Also, Bam Adebayo's name keeps popping up in fan circles, but insiders say that's more of a dream scenario than a genuine negotiation. The same goes for Ben Simmons and Kristaps Porzingis. Now, let's clear the noise. Kevin Durant has reportedly listed 3 preferred trade destinations: Miami, San Antonio, and Houston. Speculatively, the deal might already be in place. They're seemingly waiting for draft pieces to fall. Golden State is nowhere in that conversation. The Suns are shopping Durant to the highest bidder. They're not interested in another reunion tour with the Bay. As for Giannis Antetokounmpo, there's been chatter. Warriors insiders have floated his name as a top-tier trade dream. Could Kuminga, Podziemski, and picks be enough? Probably not. And there's no indication that the Bucks are ready to blow it up. So, Giannis is staying put for now. Interestingly, the Warriors offseason isn't just about head-turning trades. They've also been looking at more subtle, roster-balancing moves. Brook Lopez is a name to watch, especially if the Bucks shift direction. He's an experienced shot blocker with range, perfect for Golden State's switch-heavy defense. Bruce Brown carries a gritty, two-way presence. He fits Kerr's system and would thrive next to Curry and Draymond. Next, Malik Beasley could be a bench scorer, a role the team hasn't filled since Jordan Poole's exit. Even free agents like Derek White and DeAnthony Melton have appeared in reports. It's a long list, but everything here revolves around the idea of onboarding smart veterans on team-friendly deals. So, as it stands, Golden State is walking a cap tightrope. They're pushing $170 million in committed salary. Luxury tax rules limit their wiggle room. That's why every move matters. If Kuminga stays, the depth chart includes Curry, Butler, Kuminga, Draymond, and Looney. Add Wiggins and Podziemski, and you've got a 7-man core. However, notably, depth wins playoff games, and last year's version of this team struggled to close fourth quarters. This is where players like John Collins or Brook Lopez come into play, or even someone unexpected via the draft or veteran minimum. The front office is evidently chasing wins now. Circle June 29th. That's the deadline to issue Kuminga's qualifying offer. Then comes the June 25th NBA draft. If the Warriors make a surprise move, that's the window. By mid-July, free agency will tell us how serious they are about reloading around Steph. And if you're wondering about trade season, then wait for December. That's when newly signed players become eligible for trades and when the market truly opens up. Golden State Warriors have got a plan. It's about short-term flexibility, mid-season optionality, and win-now veterans. Whether Kuminga stays or goes, the Warriors are expected to gear up for another serious run. What's the one move you think would make this roster complete? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more off-season breakdowns every week right here